Our Global Affairs editor John Lyons joins us now from Washington. John, Joe Biden is going to try to convince Donald Trump not to pull support for Ukraine when he takes office. What's been said?
Well, yes, Gemma, this coming Wednesday night Australian time, Wednesday morning in Washington here, Donald Trump will go to the White House for a transition, his first transition meeting with Joe Biden. And the one thing that the Biden administration is signalling as it prepares to leave office is that America should continue its steadfast support financially for Ukraine. They're arguing that if the United States, through NATO, the major funder of NATO, doesn't support Ukraine in its fight against Russia, then Russia will take Ukraine, and then it's possible it can take other countries in Europe. So what has happened is Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor to the White House, has said in the last few hours that the Biden administration, one of its priorities in these last few weeks will be to lobby people, particularly in Congress and the incoming Trump administration, that it is so important to continue that support for Ukraine, because we know that Donald Trump, we know a lot of Republicans are not so enthusiastic. The view they reflect of many Americans is, why should we be paying money for a war which is a long way away from us when we have all of our own problems in America? So it'll be interesting to see how strongly the Trump administration continues to support Ukraine.
And John, can you give us some context of Trump's history with Ukraine? We know that he was impeached but cleared over allegations that he sought help from Ukraine to boost his chances of re-election in 2020.
That's right, Gemma. In 2019, President Trump was accused of breaking the law, allegedly by lobbying Ukrainian officials at the very top of Ukraine to help them to investigate and dig up damaging information about the Biden family, particularly the president and his son Hunter Biden, in terms of possible deals with Ukraine that were not above board and did not comply with various international law. Now, he was impeached on that, but he was cleared, Donald Trump. So he's got that element of history there. It's interesting, in the last few days, Volodymyr Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, has rung and spoken to Donald Trump. As yet, Vladimir Putin has not, which might say something interesting. And it's also interesting that when Volodymyr Zelensky rang to speak to Donald Trump halfway through the conversation, Donald Trump, it was a sign of who was sitting there with him, presumably planning the new administration, handed the phone, said, "Hey, I want you to speak to someone." It was Elon Musk.
And John, in September, the incoming Vice President JD Vance said the current line of demarcation between Russia and Ukraine could become a demilitarised zone. So could Ukraine be pressured to concede territory?
Well, certainly this week, Brian Lanza, who was a strategist for the Trump campaigns, two of them, he said 2 days ago that he believed that Ukraine would need to, under any new administration, basically accept the status quo for any peace deal. That is, Ukraine's lost about a fifth of its land to Russia, the soldiers have come across and taken 20% of the country. And that he essentially said Crimea is gone, don't even think about getting Crimea back, and you might have to accept current borders. And so the Trump administration, or the incoming team, has said Brian Lanza doesn't speak for us. They're keeping their options open. But it's interesting that whether it's JD Vance, Brian Lanza, or some Republicans, there's a lot of pressure for Ukraine to come to some sort of accommodation here. Donald Trump has famously said a few months ago, "I will solve the Ukraine war in 24 hours." So he will probably get together Vladimir Putin, Volodymyr Zelensky, and say to them, diplomatically bang their heads together, and he has leverage over Zelensky and can say to him, if you don't accept my deal, then we're turning off the tap, or at least slowing the tap down on funding through NATO for you. And so I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on Volodymyr Zelensky.
Global Affairs editor John Lyons, thank you.